I'm going to take you back to 12,000 to 17,000 years ago, the Magdalenian period.
It is the 21st day of October 2022, and we are here as film students to embark on a trip to Amsterdam to understand the evolution of film throughout history. Our first encounter at Amsterdam train station was a pianist playing melodic song. It was very exciting. We bought the boat to cross to the other side of Amsterdam to continue the trip. I began by asking students their expectations about the trip.
Yeah. What's your expectations?
I don't really know anything about the museum. I don't even know that this was a museum.
Your expectations?
For today?
Yeah?
Well, I heard that it was pretty good. I think it should be good. Yeah.
Your expectations?
Very, very good. Yeah.
Your expectations for the trip?
A lot of films.
Yeah?
Yeah, I don't really expect anything else.
Equipment to stay with it.
Go back into history to see how film evolved with these early film apparatus, how they use them, and how we evolved to our modern day society of camera. And we hope to see. Yeah.
To the other side of the lake, we started the journey by walking about half a kilometer to the first museum. Upon arrival to the first museum, we were introduced to what we are about to experience.
Okay, welcome at the Eye Collection Center, and I will tell something about the collection of eye and something about the digitalization of films, which is of course very important for us. Film-related stuff, so the context of the film, projectors, cameras, pre-cinema, film devices. So, as it is a big group, I want to divide the group in 3 parts.
Hold the door open for each other.
Here we had an amazing lecture about historical film devices and their uses.
We have here a thermotrope, and you are back in 1825 when Dr. Edwin Paris invented more or less this thing. Well, there's an apocryphal story about the astronomers where somebody said, I can show you a coin, 2 sides of the coin. And they didn't believe him, and he turned the coin on the table, and indeed you could see the 2 sides of the coin together. But it's not sure that it really happened. But Edwin Paris produced this and sold this thermotrope. Now there is something interesting happening in archaeology, because I'm going to take you back to 12,000 to 17,000 years ago, the Magdalenian period. And look at those 2 images. You see there a so-called rondel, because it's in French, And you see a mountain goat on one side and a mountain goat on the other side. One picture, the animal has fallen or is sitting on his legs, and on the other, you see him standing. And the theory of Mark Azema is that this is an early archaeological tabernacle invented by the people who lived in the mountain. And the interesting thing is that even in that early times, people were interested in making still images move. So I'm going to collect it now again. So there was a Belgian professor, Joseph Plateau, and he invented this machine. This was called the Phenomenology. If you look through the slits and if you move this, you'll see images moving. You see it? The black images in the middle you will see just very well in motion. And again, people were trying to invent, again, making those still images move. And what you see here, you see a horrible story. There is something terrible happening to the head. He is taking his head, he's taking it off, he's putting it through his legs. They were all meant to make still images move. And there was a man, Emile Genoux, he was an artist, he was also French again, and he invented this thing, the praxiloscope. This is a miniature replica also. In the 19th century, he had this mirror sitting here, and then the image of the tape that was inside was reflected in the mirrors, and then you get a very clear image. On the trapeze. This is a Dutch product, and he used the same images that Emile Genoux when he designed this man with the look and with the little dog. To this apparatus. Here we see a mutoscope. This is probably the only one in the world because it has been standing in the office of Monsieur Gaumont. He was one of the biggest French production houses. And the Lumière brothers, they were famous of the cinematograph. They invented the Kinora. Well, they sold the patent to Gaumont, and here you have the tape that you put in there, and it was even more interesting because you could buy or you could hire the Kinora camera. Well, of course, like I said, it was only for the people who were well-to-do because that would be costing a year's wage of a London workman. It was very expensive, but then you could run your own movie. You sent it to the factory, they developed it, and they sent it nicely back in this box to you. And then you had your own selfie. Yes, it's right, it was from Metropolis. From Metropolis. How did the guys in Metropolis make those lights? How did they do that? Light bulb, electricity cord, you swing it around and you get those nice lights. The interesting thing is that these machines were made to be a camera. You could just, with this light bulb, of course you have to close it, and you could show your movie. You plug it in, of course, you need electricity, because electricity is 19th century invention already, yes.
Were these handheld or were they still on?
This is handheld. In 1946, the Soviet Union was very keen to develop their children, and they tried to make this 17.5. What is that 17.5 millimeter? Well, they took the expensive 35 millimeter strip and lengthwise they split it, and 35 divided by 2 is 17.5, isn't it so? There is no prototype somewhere ever, it's only in a Russian educational magazine. So here we have a camera of Arthur Melbourne Cooper. He was a very famous movie maker in those early days, and he made an animation movie in 1908, and that was The Dream of Toyland. The whole movie, you can find it on YouTube. It's a marvel of animation. This is one of the efforts to make sound movies. Now this is the Luthaphone. It was made by Luc Barnstein, that's a Dutch producer, and it made it possible to synchronize sound and images. Only it wasn't working very well. After a while they decided, well, we write optically sound on the film material itself. Look very carefully, and you see somewhere difference.
Oh, there's sound?
Yeah, here's the perforation and there isn't. So you put 2 rolls of films and it goes through here, and A whole factory full of men just turning those wheels, horrible work. Interestingly, in the start of the cinema, that was a woman's work. There was a company in Paris run by women. Women did all the work. So this wasn't used very long, but we are quite happy that we have this is the Akeley camera, invented by Carl Akeley, and he was a big game hunter in Africa. He was shooting elephants, lions, and all kinds of beasts. But he was doing that to stuff them in the Natural History Museum in the United States. Because he had a special idea. You have to show the animal in its natural surroundings. And he was also one of the first ecologists, because he persuaded the King of Belgium, Leopold II, to have the first animal reserve in the Congo. And the cameras he had, he was totally unsatisfied with them. So what do when you need a good camera? You invent it yourself. This he invented in 1917, and it was quite famous because all the cameramen loved it, because this camera had a tripod and it could move in all directions you ever wanted. There's a famous movie, Wings, and there are pictures of that, and there is a cameraman sitting outside in a movie and he's shooting with this kind of camera other airplanes fly. And we come to digital film. This is the Amiga computer started in 1985. And that is really the beginning of editing digital movies, because there was a program called the Lux Video, and that was the very first time that you could edit digital recordings. Here we see one of the real cinematograph Lumière invented by Les Frères Lumière. And you see what a simple machine it is. And again, it's a camera, it's a printer, and you could also project with it if you put a lamp behind it. And people love it to be in the movies, and they were a group and they were going to a city, and everybody knew, that's why Kenya coming, we are going to be in the movies. So in the morning they were shooting the movies, in the afternoon they developed it, and in the evening you went to the cinema and you saw yourself. Here I am. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
After the lecture, we were taken to the editing room to understand how editing was done.
And here we work on the stabilization of the film, and we work on the restoration of the film, so the small damage of the film we can restore here. And then the second part is, of course, when you work on a monitor, you know that every monitor has different light, which is the last part of a film, and then you have to do a grading of the film. Sometimes we have not 2 but 4, and a feature film is maybe 1.5 to 2 terabytes.
After the editing, we were also taken through to understand how film material were produced.
From the beginning on until 1950, the standard was nitrate. The problem with nitrate film is that it's quite easily set on fire. The gases are really toxic. Really, in the beginning, there was some horrible disasters where audience died. So there were quite strict regulations. So a lot of these films becoming really sour. It's called vinegar syndrome because it smells like vinegar from the start. Films were made black and white, but they did miss color and they like color, so they applied the color. So they made a positive print and I cut it up and put each scene in a color bar. And then you get these wonderful colors, hand coloring or stencil coloring, labor intensive. As sound came, all this color disappeared because you cannot cut into a sound film, because then you cut in the sound and you hear that. So all of a sudden all films became black and white until they really invented the color.
Here is the film back, and we were taken through to understand how films were packaged and stored.
This is our backlog. So all the films which are not in our collection yet will be stored here, and then we want to watch them if we want to have them in the collection. This is what the film is. 5, 6, 7 of those rolls, between 20 and 35 kilograms, and then 600 times. So it's about to the moon and back.
At the 5th part, we were taken through film-related documents and materials such as books, journals, and newsletters that contain film-related information, and how to use these materials for research purposes.
You have to write about the film copies, you have to make context. So you need the books, you need posters, you need publicity material. I'm going to show you a small reclamefilm. It's about two comics. And even if you're researching, you can sometimes ask for a bin. So this was a 50s film. So if you compare it with nowadays, you would have a very interesting discussion about cultural science.
This was the last experience in our first museum, so we moved out to the main Eye Museum to view other exhibitions. When we came out, we had what I would call fitness walk to the main Eye Museum. Upon arrival, we were checked in by the gate man. We first went into a dark room with an amazing historical art and immersive music, giving us the sense of the past. We also had the opportunity to see different projectors and film devices exhibited with their information written under them. So, what's your experience generally?
I liked it. I love it. I liked it. Because this kind of projector, I've only read them on books, never seen them in real life. It's really different if you're really seeing like pictures moving.
So how is your experience with the whole tour?
It's pretty cool. I learned a lot.